I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our colleague, Dr Irene Lubbe from the University of Pretoria in South Africa, with what I think is a great title, Navigating the Forces of Change, Supporting Faculty Success and Failure in the Transition to Online Teaching and Assessment During a Crisis. Fantastic title, Irene, looking forward to it. If you are looking for any of the other sessions, just a reminder that meeting the challenge of accessibility, inclusion and access in online education, you need to scroll to the top of the agenda and click track 2. Or if you're looking for the age of edutainment, how to use video effectively within your institution with Powtoon in the Tech Lab, click track 3. Don't forget, we do want to have your questions. I will be monitoring those during the presentation, and hopefully you'll have lots of things to ask Irene. So over to you, Irene. Thank you very much indeed.
Good day, everyone, and thank you very much for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here today and share with you some of our initiatives. So without further ado, as I hope you can see my screen. I'm going to take you quickly through a little bit of a background from where I am from and what we do at the University of Pretoria. But the main focus today will really be on what we as education consultants did during this pandemic time and what we are still doing at this stage. Now, when we first heard about the lockdown in the beginning of last year, it was scary, but it was far, far away from us. And not everyone was as concerned, but our deputy deans and we as educational consultants started to become a little bit uncomfortable. And we started to ask these difficult questions of what if this virus comes to South Africa, and are we really prepared to teach online, and can we transition all the content and everything that we do to an online environment? Now, obviously, we have flashbacks of films we watched a quarter of a decade ago where we had Outbreak, and this is actually a movie I used when I taught infection control to my undergraduate nursing students, and not too distant 10 years ago, the movie Contagion. But once again, that was scary as it was. That was thankfully not based on a real life situation. So we moved on at that stage. But then COVID-19 hit South Africa as well. And we realized that this is serious and we have to ask these difficult questions once again. And we actually have to have answers to these questions. Now, despite our level of denial and fear and apprehension, on the 23rd of March, our president said, we are going into 21 days of lockdown, which didn't sound too bad, but we were urged to work from home, and if we could, and that obviously had a lot of mixed feelings and conflicted feelings. For the students, it was extended autumn break. For us, we could work at home. The lecturers worked at home, and we could support them. But the reality in South Africa, as in many other countries, was that people went into panic buying, you know, the toilet paper and the baked beans, and the situation escalated. The concern is that with the lockdown, it also impacted, obviously, our university and our students. And this is now where my part come in. What role did I play during this lockdown and the continuation of the lockdown at the university? Now, our university is spread over 6 campuses. We've got 9 faculties, and we have a centralized department for education innovation with 1 educational consultant per faculty. And that would be then me. So I am seconded to the Faculty of Health Sciences, where I'm responsible for the faculty development of everyone in the 4 schools. So in total, it's about 42 departments, and I am then responsible to train them in teaching, learning, and assessment in different ways. Luckily for us, even before the pandemic started, we already introduced the hybrid way of teaching at the university. So students need to come prepared to class, there's engagement, and there's consolidation after the class session as well. Now, the uptake wasn't as great before the pandemic, and there's various reasons for it. We have very differences in our schools. Our School of Medicine make use of joint appointments, guest lecturers, block systems. So that made implementation of the hybrid mode of teaching very difficult. But irrespective of being difficult with the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to transition to a temporary and then to a more permanent online teaching, learning, and assessment. Now, this is really a challenge for us. As I said, I'm in the health sciences faculty, so we train medical doctors, registered nurses, physiotherapy students. So this was a challenge to transition onto this online environment. Then for our students was just as difficult. We have, as with every place in the world, I assume, or I guess, we have different student populations. They come from diverse backgrounds. They've got diverse resources. Some of them depend on the residencies for shelter, for food, for Wi-Fi connection as well. So we as educational consultants had to guide the lecturers as well in how to reach and teach all of these students during this pandemic. And then from my side as educational consultant in supporting the lecturers to reach the students, I created a virtual office with real office hours. And that really helped to support the lecturers as well. Now, the real office hours didn't really transpire the way we thought it would, because they would phone 9 o'clock at night and over weekends. And we really worked 12 to 16 hours a day, especially during the initial phases of this pandemic. This is also the time when I decided to create my Bitmojis, and you will see my Bitmojis on most of my slides, because I felt that I needed a little bit of a personal presence in my communication with them. I don't just want to send them an email with, wow, that was well done. I want to send them an emoji with a high five and an excited face and stars and say, you really did a great thing here. And then obviously in my virtual office, I have my dog, because I have 3 that makes huge noises. So I have to warn the people before the time, there will be some noise most of the time. Now, when we looked in at what we did as educational consultants, and each one did it differently in their own faculty, but in my faculty, there were 6 focus areas that I had to focus on. And the main focus with all of these focus areas was really to save the academic year, to support the lecturers in saving the academic year. And they really did. We finished the academic year on time, and it was fantastic. Now, if we then look at these 6 areas, the first one is obviously teaching online via the learning management system. And as we are a contact university, we haven't taught them, or they were not experienced in teaching in a virtual environment. So we had to create support and how to teach in this learning, in this on this learning management system. Now, thankfully, we have a wonderful team of instructional designers, and they manage everything related to the learning management system. So they created step sheets and videos to assist the lecturers in the online environment there. We as educational consultants were involved in helping them transition to this area, to how do they convert PowerPoint to something different, and not just take the content that they have and dump it online, but how do they create an online presence, and how do they change from just presenting to discussing, to problem solving, to integration and application of knowledge, and how do they do this in a virtual environment to which they are not familiar. Now, if that was not bad enough, asking them to teach online, we also have to navigate the load shedding. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with load shedding, but in South Africa, we have to take turns to use electricity. So our electricity is shut off at certain times. And if you look at today's schedule, it is now 5 p.m. in South Africa. So we were scheduled to have load shedding to just half an hour before my session start, and we hoped it would end before I have to start. I have to present. But the lecturers have to navigate these waters. And now, if they have scheduled classes, they need to look at this schedule as well and decide, well, can they go online? And even if they can go online, then it might be that the students can't go online because the suburbs have different time zones for our load shedding. So this was quite an interesting challenge for them to navigate as well. Now, initially, when the pandemic started, as a consultant, I really was all over the place. I have to make this disclaimer. I did individual consultations. I did group sessions. I created virtual workshops. We created webinars for them. There was conferences that we attended and that we arranged. We had brown bag lunches. We converted some of our training to self-paced online courses. But the main thing that I think initially helped was the repositories that we created for the lecturers. So on the learning management system, each education consultant have an area where they can, I want to say dump because that's what I initially did, where they can put content for the lecturers. And really in the beginning, when I found information, I just dumped it there. But then I found that this was really overwhelming for me and for the lecturers. And they would phone and say, but I want my students to make mind maps. Where can I find the app? And I'll say, but it's on the repository there. But it was a struggle. So in an effort or in an attempt to help them, I created another type of repository. And this repository, they could download on their phones, and you're welcome to scan the QR code if you're curious and you want to see what it looks like. But they could quickly scan through this repository if they want something on mind maps, if they want something on how to make an interactive image for their students. And this repository contained only open educational resource platforms and apps that they could use. So I didn't want them to go to an app or to a platform and then they had to pay a registration. Now, with open educational resources, there's usually a limited amount of things that you can do, but at least it was available for them and they can use it. And if I have to look at everything I've done in this 15 months, I think this was maybe one of the most valuable things that we've created. Then, helping them to teach online, we also did virtual class visits, and on the LMS we gave all the information to them, and you can see that at the back is what my information sheet looked like. And then I gave them hyperlinks to templates, guidelines, the lesson plan, the rubric that we use when we do a class visit. And these class visits were then either synchronous or asynchronous. So if we couldn't be there during their live presentation, we watched the recording, looked at the lesson plan, and gave constructive feedback to the lecturers. Now, moving then from teaching online to creating digital content for our students and guiding the lecturers in this process. So we created short learning courses, and this is one of the self-paced online courses we've created, and teaching them how to make narrated PowerPoints, how to convert it to a video, how to compress it to make it more data sensitive to the students, how to create podcasts for their students. And in the process of these workshops, we also demonstrated the application of these things to them. So in reality, this was really product, process, and praxis all in one go for the lecturers. We also, some of our priority courses or workshops, as I said, we converted it to short private online courses that they can do self-paced, and this is one of my workshops that I've converted. And this one was focused on teaching them how to use videos in teaching, learning, and assessment. So once again, trying to show them that there's different ways of doing this, and the lecturers could do this course in one sitting in 5 hours, or they could space it over a week or 2 weeks as they have time and availability to do this course. As it was self-paced, they could go through it on their own. And we try to put in a human touch in all of our workshops, even in the self-paced workshops. The people who know me from the university know I'm very much focused on coffee at times. So putting those type of things in our workshops just to give it a little bit more of a human touch. And then we try to introduce different types of workshops as well. This is a workshop on game-based learning and gamification that I'm facilitating, trying to show the lecturers that there's different ways of teaching and different ways of assessing the students. And once again, this workshop is placed on the learning management system, where we mirror the hybrid teaching approach with prepare, engage, and consolidate for them, that they can experience it the way we want them to create content for their students as well. Then, and this is, I think, one of the exciting areas for me was the alternative assessment. During this time, we had to look at assessment differently. So we as education consultants had webinars teaching them how to do alternative assessments. We had conferences where we asked people to present on best practices, lessons learned, horrible failures that they want to share. They said, please do not do this. It doesn't work. We had virtual brown bag lunches. We identified champions in the different departments and really asked them to showcase and share what they are doing. And then we had some of the other consultants created priority courses with a specific focus on assessment. So purposeful questioning, rubrics, how to create a rubric and use it. And then obviously my game-based learning workshop also fits in here because it's not just on teaching, but also then on assessment. The lecturers really amazed us. They took this approach and they ran with it. So some of them went and converted their courses to continuous or even programmatic assessment. They started to create integrated assessments where they would incorporate the anatomy, the physiology, the pathophysiology, the pharmacology, everything in the assessment that they are doing, helping the students to move away from a silo approach when they are assessed to a holistic integrated approach. Some of them created assignments where students had to create videos or create other content that they have to submit. Some of the lecturers used their own videos and they embedded MCQs of single best answer questions within the videos that they used for assessment. They looked at adaptive release assignments and assessments. And then some of them even went as far as using portfolios in their modules, which was then very often linked to the programmatic assessment approach. They worked with group projects, and then once again, as I said, game-based learning and gamification. To me, the value in this approach, in this alternative approach for the lecturers, but also for the students, was that the students couldn't Google the answers. This was not something that they could do the night before. They couldn't cut and paste. There was no way for them to, I want to say, cheat on these assignments. And that was exciting. And it was actually wonderful to see how excited the students got over these type of assessments. This is just one of the examples where one of the lecturers took a really boring topic and she made an escape room activity for the students that involved teaching, learning, and assessment. Now, this takes time, but the lecturer doesn't have to sit now and mark 316 scripts, and she can repurpose this going forward as well. Then even in times of pandemics, we still need to look at professional development and supporting faculty members in developing their careers. So we took our entire onboarding or academic induction online. We created 2 tracks, one for novice lecturers, one for established lecturers. We taught them how to create teaching portfolios for various purposes, again, incorporating the class visits and introducing them to resources that they can use for their own development, and then helping them to write up their learnings as well as a scholarship of teaching and learning approach. Now, as consultants, we do not do student support, but we do get involved if there's projects where we can support the lecturers to support the students. So we had a little bit of a problem with academic dishonesty, as I think most of the universities have. And to combat that, the library created a narrated PowerPoint for us on plagiarism. And I took their 10 MCQs that they had at the end of their PowerPoint, and I've put it into a silly game. But once again, just showing to the lecturers how they can do assessment differently. And then obviously the students had access to these resources as well. One of our lecturers created a short animated video, making the students aware of plagiarism. We are nearly finished with creating an app where students can get all the information they need regarding plagiarism. And then obviously, there must be a game. So we are creating the plagiarism game for the students in the form of an escape room or a treasure hunt, whichever way we want to look at it. And as I said, we do not do student support, but I think I will do my university an injustice if I do not share with you some of the things that they are also doing. So things like data for the students, devices, more tutors, and I think Prof. Daniel also referred to this earlier on today. They had personal protective equipment training for the students. They provided them with their PPEs. They started a food project as well as a sanitary pad project for the students that needed those products. And then the last one is the self-care ball that we also had to look at, or the focus area. And this is not measured, it's not a KPI somewhere, but this is really just a checking in, asking, how are you? Are you coping? Can we assist you? And then actually to stop and to listen to their answers. And this goes actually both ways for us as consultants to one another as well. But then specifically, my focus here is on the lecturers and the support they need. So all in all, this was our 6 focus areas, or my 6 focus areas specifically. And we ask the lecturers, we really support them and encourage them to share the successes and the failures of their teaching and learning approaches, the assessment that they are doing on different platforms, so that other people can learn from them, from their best practices, but also then from the mistakes that they have made. So if you want to make contact with me, you are welcome to contact me. If you want to look at some of the resources, you are welcome. And these just some of our publications that is coming out of these endeavors that we tried during this pandemic. So thank you very much. And Lynn, back over to you.
Well, I'm overwhelmed actually, Irene, with everything that you've done. You've been so busy. It's hard to imagine how you've drawn breath over the last 15 months. I know that colleagues will be really interested in the resources, and you've touched on a number of things that I think are becoming themes, aren't they? Self-care for students, how we deal with plagiarism. We're reluctant to talk about cheating, but nonetheless, how do we teach students to develop their own academic voice and to avoid falling into that trap? So absolutely brilliant. We've got some questions, but we've got limited time in which to answer them. So there's a question from Lena, who was interested in your brown bag lunch sheets and SPOs, and really just asking a little bit more about some of the details of what you covered in those areas. You have touched on that, but I think Lena's particularly interested in that.
The brown bag lunches was very interesting. We've done that before the pandemic in person, and then we switched to virtual brown bag lunches. So what happened is, as I work with the lecturers and they do great things like the escape room, for instance, I will ask them to volunteer. So they said that it's not volunteer, it's volunteering, but I will ask them to do a brown bag lunch for me, to share their practices and again the lessons learned. And that was very informal. So some of them have a PowerPoint and everything, but it's over a lunch hour once a month, and people can virtually join and ask questions, and it's interactive. And there we really shared best practices, and very often in that hour, the tips that you can't share in a 20-minute presentation comes out. The tips of don't make a lock like this, or don't have this thing there. The students get so sidetracked, you can't focus there. So those are really the valuable things. And if I think that one of my brown bag lunches was one of the lecturers who used memes as a way to teach, and the students had to create memes in the teaching, and that was a wonderful brown bag lunch. So those are the things that's really exciting. So I search for them. I go to the lecturers and say, "You did something nice. Well done. Come share with us." And yeah. And then the SPOCs, the short private online courses, that's really things like just-in-time training. So how to make a narrated PowerPoint, how to make a podcast, those type of courses that we created for them.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of what you've done is really fun as well. I've got a question from Irina, which is, if you could please just describe in detail what you mean by integrated assessment, please. That would be really helpful.
So previously, let me think of an example. And what in physiotherapy, they would focus on injuries, say, for instance, of the upper limb, and they will only focus on on certain injuries there. But now with the integrated, they would really look at the different population types, so children, the age, the athletes, and they will look at different type of injuries related to age, but also to the to what they are doing and their remedial, no, not remedial, the exercises they must give to them, the recruiting recruiting exercises. I've learned a lot of new words there, and then incorporating definitely the anatomy. So they will not ask a question of which are the muscles of the shoulder, but they will ask them how to describe how they would strengthen these muscles. And in that exercise, they would actually have to refer to the muscles, but also then bring in the physiology, the pathophysiology, because it's an older patient with maybe arthritis or something like that. So that was really exciting. And they gave the assignments to the students, and the students had to come up and demonstrate. So one of the things they had to do was create a home care plan for someone at home. So the students had to ask their parents to quickly do the exercises at home. It was really fun. It takes long to mark, but it's fun, and the students actually apply the knowledge. It's now not just a regurgitation of content and just giving the recipe of this is how it should be done, but they really think it through. And I think that's where the real value is. And I don't think they will ever go back to the old way of assessing.
Really interesting, isn't it? This application of learning and practice-based and making it relevant and real. And I think that is one of the challenges for us online, isn't it? That how do we engage our colleagues in that and help our students to understand that learning is not passive, but very, very active. So fantastic. You're getting lots of compliments in the chat bar about the impressive work that you've done. Dare I ask, I don't know if I dare ask this because you've been so busy, what next, Irene, in the University of Pretoria?
We are looking at a lot of another priority courses, making more priority courses. The one that we are focusing on now, especially then in my faculty, is scenario-based learning, looking at how do we incorporate that? Of course, we have to teach now in the virtual environment, and with scenario-based learning, with the different branches, so the students can learn consequences. It's a safe area to fail, but that they will learn the consequences. If I give the wrong medication here, or I do the wrong procedure, 2 steps down the line, the patient dies. And then they can revert back and they can retry again. So scenario-based learning is one of the big things we are looking at in the skills lab. And that is not my project, but it's a very exciting project where they are making molds and things where they can work on that, like the mannequins, but on a different scale for pediatric patients and things like that. So that's another really exciting project. And then we have also a workshop that we are creating on clinical MOOCs. So on how do you do clinical teaching, bedside teaching, and how do you do this clinical teaching in a virtual environment? So that is a few of the upcoming things. There's a long list.
Absolutely. Well, Irene, can I thank you again for sharing what has been a fascinating presentation, and you know, your energy has, I think, impressed all of us. Thank you very much.